Let's go! LSU versus Kentucky breakdown today. And look, I know there's a lot of negativity surrounding the program, but let's remember a happier time, okay? Our favorite trip ever to Lexington. Now, we did have that overtime loss, but who cares about that? We ended up winning the title anyway, and then, of course, we had this ridiculous comeback against the Wildcats. FYI, we actually chat before, during, and after the game in our YouTube chat room, so all you got to do is click the link to our halftime live stream, and you could talk to me and just everyone during the game. Let's go. Now, the first thing in discussing LSU versus Kentucky as far as keys to the game are concerned, right now, LSU can't run the football. And the first big key to this game isn't just running the football, it's just the offensive line as a whole. Last week against Auburn, they were able to drive our offensive line into the backfield essentially on every other play. And the second thing, will Max Johnson finish the game strong? This has been an issue with Max Johnson. In crunch time, he has the tendency to miss throws. Once again, before we get to key number 2, they're laughing, they're smiling, they're thinking this is my favorite thing. All these people ready to rush the field, they are still coming down from the crowd. But anyway, we continue with our breakdown today. Once again, trying to put some positivity into the world with this LSU football program. Point number 2 is pretty simple. Defensively, can LSU continue their solid play? Now, as we pointed out earlier this week, the LSU defense played okay. It's not necessarily good that Bo Nix has played his 2 best career games against our 4-man front. Now, this is very key. While Kentucky is undefeated, and they do have a lot of speed, and they do have an offensive coordinator who came over from the Rams, there's a lot going Kentucky's way. However, their offense hasn't necessarily lit the world on fire. Yes, they have the most underrated running back in the country in Chris Rodriguez. Yes, they have a lot of skill position players, including number 1, Wan'Dale Robinson, and they have a quarterback who is a ridiculously talented athlete in Will Levi. Still, Kentucky really needed a blocked kick to win that game last week versus Florida. Not only a block kick, but one that was returned like 80 yards for a touchdown. And against South Carolina, a team that plays hard but overall isn't really that good, they barely beat them. And now, before we get into the special teams play, the first throw before the Bluegrass Miracle, was this an incomplete pass? Michael Clayton caught it and immediately started calling timeout. It did not look, obviously this footage is a little grainy. It did not look like he actually completed this catch, but he did the smart thing and acted like he did and immediately called timeout. And they were adamant about it being incomplete, but this was the best part. Drenching the coach, he immediately looked up at the clock. Here's a replay of it. Oh my God. Thank goodness, number 1, there was no instant replay of the Michael Clayton catch there. But number 2, we had a camera angle. Look, he's looking up at the clock whenever he is getting that. Here's one of my favorite SEC players of all time, Jared Lorenzen, as we get into special teams. So, yes, Kentucky returned a field goal for a touchdown. I don't think a field goal block is anything you really need to worry about, considering Cade York's height on his kicks are so good. But Kentucky overall, it's so crazy. They're already sprinting on the field. Kentucky overall has really solid special teams play. Alrighty, a few key players as you watch the Bluegrass Miracle unfold in the background. Kentucky will be without their star nose tackle, Marquan McCall, so that is good news for LSU struggling offensive line. But Kentucky's defensive line is still pretty good. But still, let's give you a few more key players outside of the linemen. Let's start off with the obvious here for Kentucky. Chris Rodriguez is just a really solid back. But overall, the guy that is really special is Wan'Dale Robinson. Last week versus Auburn, LSU was able to lock Auburn's receivers down for the most part on the outside because none of Auburn's wide receivers are all that special. So I'm going to give the LSU defensive backfield. This is going to be a tougher matchup versus Kentucky's skill guys. So that's the guy you got to look out for. Number one for Kentucky, Wan'Dale Robinson. Player number 2, I'm going to go with Sage Ryan. This will be the first time we will see number 15, the true freshman 5-star out of Lafayette, suit up for LSU. LSU will be without some very key defensive backs. Once again, the injury issues continue, most notably Major Burns. So in steps Sage Ryan, potentially as a guy that's going to get a lot of snaps on Saturday. So I'm really excited about that. Obviously, we've talked about Sage Ryan so much on this channel. And look, LSU's last 2 5-star defensive backs have had phenomenal true freshman seasons. Hopefully, Sage Ryan continues that trend on Saturday. Now we get to prediction time. And this was I remember this so vividly. When they actually kicked the ball, they were actually offsides here. Okay, so LSU caught a little bit of unluckiness here. You'll see it right here. They were clearly offsides when this ball was kicked. It was a little bit different because they had to have somebody hold it. Look. Look at that. Huh? It was close. It was bang, bang. But still, LSU elected to not return this kick, which was the smart thing to do because you're probably not going to return a ball that's that weird of a bounce. So Devery Henderson gets it and immediately goes out of bounds and hardly any time runs off the clock. But let's get into this part of the breakdown, okay? So LSU right now around a 2.5-point underdog to Kentucky with an over-under set for 51. And look at this guy back here. Early 2000s, everything was just so different. And of course, who can forget Nick freaking Saban? Now, look, being the head coach of any program is really hard, but I do want to address some comments on my commentary of Ed Orgeron because some of you feel like I've just been too harsh. But this has always been the case when I've started this channel. I just try and provide my most honest commentary. And for those that are real diehards of the channel, you know that some of the criticisms I've made of Ed Orgeron I was doing before the season even began. So I like Ed Orgeron a lot. Personally, there are some things that he's really good at, and it honestly means a lot to someone like me that somebody from Louisiana is coaching LSU because there is such a strong tie with the state of Louisiana and LSU, with it being the only Power 5 program in the state. There's something really there's a mystique around LSU that if you're a fan of the program, you understand it. So I don't think any one of you dislikes Ed Orgeron personally. Some of you might. I've disagreed with some of the things that he's done and said, but overall, I think he's been really, really good, not only on the field for LSU, but just overall. Now, with that said, that doesn't make him above reproach. That doesn't make him above criticism. And let's be honest, name something you can really be positive about Ed Orgeron based on anything he's done in the past few months. Nothing. Whether it's recruiting, whether it's game managing, whether it's basically just anything, he's just not been good in any facet of football. And that's not good for the guy that is making as much money as he's making. And that's the thing. Your head coach or head coaches, wherever they are, you should be the most critical of that coach because so much relies on his decision making. So much relies on his thought process. So much relies on how he handles himself and how he is perceived. So you should be more critical of the coach than you are other aspects of this sport that we all know and love as college football. So I would really like Ed Orgeron to turn this thing around, but right now I just think it is a lost cause. With that said, we will get into our predictions. Obviously, the weather looks to be pretty good. You guys have been seeing some stats comparing LSU and Kentucky, and there's obviously a lot to dislike about that. Even if you look at a yards per play basis, Kentucky is better defensively and offensively compared to LSU. And they're at home, and I've always shared this. These are my 4 major keys I always look at whenever I am picking a team. I look at home field advantage. Kentucky's going to have a night game with an energized fan base, and they're really excited about something that, honestly, they've rarely been, which is 5-0 at this point of the season. Also, you look at the head coach. I'll get into Mark Stoops in just a second, but right now Kentucky's coaching staff has been doing a better job than LSU's coaching staff. Now, your quarterback. Max Johnson's playing well, mostly in the first half of games, not so much the end of games. Will Levi isn't necessarily special, but he is more athletic than Max Johnson and can actually make some plays with his legs. I got to give it a push when it comes to the quarterback. And then, of course, this is the biggest gap between the two teams. I do look at the offensive line battle. And look, Kentucky's offensive line is probably the best in the SEC right now. And the opposite can be said about LSU. Probably the worst offensive line in this conference. So, it's kind of hard to pick against Kentucky when all those things are going in their favor. I will say this. The over-under currently is at 51, and I know the weather's going to be great, but you're looking at 2 head coaches that are very conservative on 4th down. And a little trend that I've noticed is when I see a coach that is conservative on 4th down, in other words, in plus territory on 4th and shorts, what do? A lot of unders hit when coaches decide to punt, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Kentucky's offense is just not playing well right now, so there is a play that I like a lot, even though LSU's defense, I think, does not match up well with what Kentucky can do offensively, and still, I like the under in this matchup. Now, as far as picking, it's pretty interesting that Kentucky is down to 2.5. I do think this could be like a 21-17, 20-17 type of game. And a lot of that comes down to who your field goal kicker is. So because the game, I believe, will be close, there is so much pressure on Kentucky. And last year, in a very similar spot, LSU went on the road and got it done versus Florida. College football's weird and random. So I am going to pick my LSU Tigers, even though the score on this graphic from, who remembers the Jefferson Pilot games? Dave Neal, 11 in the morning. You can't beat it. Anyway, I am actually going to go with LSU to win this one 24-20. It could just be the fan in me right now, but still, let's get this W, coach. Let's go. Don't forget post-game and halftime live streams. And if you don't know, you can go to our page and we actually chat during the game in the little side chat room. So make sure you check that out. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. Oh, we're doing chicken wings again tonight. Let's go.